tried so hard.
What you really want? What you really want?
But it doesn't even matter. Come on, tried so hard.
What you really want?
It doesn't even matter. It doesn't even matter. Come on, try.
Boy, give me a sign. Dog, I meet bitches, the street bitches, slash, Cocoa Puff, sweet bitches, make you wanna eat bitches, but not me.
I tried so
I fuck with these hoes from a distance. The instant they start to catch feelings, I start to. What is it you want from a nigga? I gave you, you gave me. I played you, you played me.
and got so far. But in the end, it doesn't even matter.
Welcome everybody to another live edition of the Showcase Pod. I am Don Vega, like always joined by the boss Chris Blackheart. Back at it again.
Back at it again. A guest that people would never guess we would ever have in studio, live.
I'm not in studio. We got
It
him
does
on the
not.
screen.
It's
That's
live.
kinda like being
It's
live, yeah.
uncensored. So when anyone has the feed, we were getting feedback recently from some recent episodes,
Yes.
and it was about that we
went soft?
We went soft.
Okay.
You know, so before when Brett came on, we said this is totally open, free, anything that you want, the good, the bad, the ugly. Doesn't matter who you want to put over, who you want to bury. This, I got a feeling this could be part one of many.
But first of all, you're a shady host, man. You got to introduce our guest. Joining us in the Showcase Pod is BRG. Welcome to the Showcase Pod.
Oh man, you're giving people high expectations. Now everyone's gonna think that I'm out here to bury the entire New England
Well,
scene now.
you know, we expected that from our prior guest, Buddy Romano. That didn't happen. Buddy's a new man. Hopefully today we'll shoot some shit and stir some pots.
Well, it doesn't come with burying, but as we know in pro wrestling, there's the truth and then there's your truth. And then the good part about that is some days when you have a conversation, stuff gets resolved. And I think this is how we actually came today. I'm sure when we posted that you were going to be on the podcast, people were like, what is going on? So with that being said, you start your story.
Well, you know, before we get on to the good stuff, you can't give it all away. It's just like wrestling, Chris. We want to know, Brett, how do you get bitten by the bug of pro wrestling? How do you fall in love with the business of pro wrestling?
Well, so it was like 2011, like literally 2 years before I came to Showcase for the first time. There was a little guy named Edge on WWE SmackDown. My friends had introduced me to wrestling not too long before that, and I had finally started watching weekly once I saw Edge on Friday Night SmackDown, and then from there I followed him and Alberto Del Rio during their feud all the way up until WrestleMania that year, which was WrestleMania 27. Mm-hmm. Literally argued as one of the worst in recent memory, but it was the one that made me want to become a pro wrestler. Edge versus Alberto Del Rio, WrestleMania 27. That will always be the match that made me want to pretty much pursue it. And then as soon as I got cut from high school hockey in December of 2013, I made my way up to Woonsocket with my mom driving me in the car. And that's where I got my first little taste of pro wrestling.
So how do you first hear about Chris Blackheart and Showcase Wrestling? All
I did was just look it up. I just looked up pro wrestling schools in Rhode Island, and Woonsocket was the closest one to me. That a 45-minute drive, I was like, can you drive me? And she's like, sure. And so we would drive up to Woonsocket every week and train for those first couple of years.
All right. So are you originally from Rhode Island, Brett?
Yeah. I grew up in West Greenwich.
Okay.
My uncle owns a restaurant down in West Greenwich called Dan's Place. And it's pretty much like the small town and the smallest state that, I grew up just pretty much in the middle of nowhere. It took me about 30 minutes just to get to my own high school, which in Rhode Island is a lot for some people. And then eventually, over time, after my dad passed away, my mom moved over to West Warwick, and now I live in Cumberland.
Okay. Blackheart.
Your first love before wrestling was hockey, correct? That was your everything?
That was literally the only sport I knew. Like the back of my hand. It was like the one sport I followed throughout. And then like I was 13 years old and just caught the wrestling bug.
So, from hockey to pro wrestling, was there a easier transition being an athlete, being coachable and playing sports?
I think that, so for me at that time, like hockey definitely gave me like an athletic edge. But it definitely didn't give me a size edge because you guys remember I was like skinnier than I am now for sure. I was like 140 pounds soaking wet. Like I definitely didn't look like a pro wrestler when I first started. I was just pursuing a dream at that point.
Okay. Blackheart.
So your first couple of years, what was your thought when you stepped in the ring for the first time?
I was like, this is cool. This is like one of the coolest things. Oh, there's a cat walking.
There's Kitty.
I got a special appearance.
But yeah, I mean, like when you were walking me back and forth on running the ropes and stuff, that was like when I first finally was like, okay, I'm starting to do something. Okay, sorry, you gotta move. But yeah, I mean, the fact that you watch something on TV for like 2 years at that point and you're so invested into it, and then you get to finally step foot inside a wrestling ring, it was an extraordinary experience, to say the least.
So when you started, you came up with a different name than you have now.
Oh, God.
How did that develop? And then you formed a tag team.
Yeah, so when we started, we were trying to come up with names, and I remember somebody, I forget who it was, but was somebody in the locker room was like, oh, I just really hate the name Todd. And I was like, okay, I can work with Todd. And then I came and talked to you, and you were like, like Harris, something along those lines. And then we had like Todd Harris come up out of the blue. I don't know where that stems from. I just remember the Todd part being the main thing, where it was like somebody saying like, that's just somebody I would want to punch, is somebody named Todd, which I can kind of agree.
So you broke in as a heel right away, if I'm not mistaken. Usually, in your beginnings, you're always a baby face. As you know now, the heel, for the most part, carries the match. Was there any difference in, knowing what you know now and back then?
Yeah, I wouldn't have wrestled Joe the Trash Man.
Wait. Are you talking about the infamous in Taunton, outside, 90-degree weather, when the Trash Man did something in the ring?
Oh, I'm just talking in general. Well, one, like, those were tough couple matches to definitely look back on nowadays, because I'm like, I clearly don't know what I'm doing, and he clearly doesn't know what he's doing, so it was like a blind leading the blind type of situation. Mm-hmm. I don't know what situation you're referring to, but knowing him, he's probably got a lot of infamous moments under his belt.
Chris.
Well, I think on that we had the snotty rich kid versus the working man. That was a gimmick, and we were doing it out at Tom and Jerry's. It was 90-degree weather, and if you bought a ticket, you got ice cream. Or Joe the Trash Man thought he was entitled to ice cream, but he was also very hungry. So he went to get food that day, and it was fried food. He ate the food, then he ate ice cream.
I know where this is going.
Yes.
He hacked all over the ring?
No, he didn't. He ran to the woods after the match.
Oh.
Yeah. That definitely wasn't with me, but
okay, so you were the lucky one then. So that was when we did the Battle Royal, and you got put to sleep. Was that the one?
Yeah, Sergeant.
All right.
So,
and you guys were trying to kayfabe me on that one.
Yes, we did.
That you were putting me over in that, but I kind of caught the vibe. I just didn't want to say anything because knowing you would have switched it up if I did say something.
That's probably right.
Yeah.
So all this happened during one of my hiatus from Showcase. So, all these stories are new to me. I came halfway through when Brett was already working on shows, and, I met him at training or whatnot. Now, after doing those first couple of shows that you started, obviously you watch wrestling other places, that you started kind of like not liking the position that you were getting put in, the booking of the character.
So here's the thing. When we say all these things, we have to remember that I was a 15-year-old kid that had quite an ego and was used to being like one of the hot players. So when I'm sitting there losing, and I was on a win streak for about 10 matches, then randomly lost on a match that Chris didn't tell me I was losing on. That was the Raynham show where you had Joe shoot the finish on me. There was that.
I don't remember that one. To be honest
That's
with you.
definitely a Chris Blackheart booking right there.
I don't remember it, so if you could tell me the story for the first time, that would be great.
No. You can't say that's the first time you've heard it. 'Cause
No,
remember
I don't remember it. I don't
that
remember.
day and being like, oh, when were you gonna tell me he was going over? And you just go, oh, he's going over.
Yeah.
Right, see, that's something I would too.
See, it sounds just like
No,
that.
I don't remember the story of that night, but no, that is something that's one of my answers I would give.
So I just got sour because I felt like I was just losing to lose. And then once I had Malik come along and me and him started getting along really well, it was like, okay, like we could definitely make this into a tag team and that would be fun. So that's literally like my first road trip in wrestling were with Malik. And I still tell him to this day I miss those trips because those were fun times. Driving 5 hours all the way up to Maine.
Okay, so that was your first exposure out of Showcase, was driving up to Maine, doing some shows, teaming up with Malik.
And, Malik, and then there was another time when we went up to Maine, and it was a couple of us, and one of them was Scott Leder, and Scott Leder, of course, had a spare rim on the back of his car, but no spare tire.
Oh, man.
We literally cracked the joke. We're probably going to get a flat on the way back, and we did. And then it took about 3 hours to finally get AAA to come and pick us up. We didn't get home until like 8 o'clock that morning.
Wow.
And thank God I had AAA. But yeah, those were the first couple. Those were the first couple trips up to Maine. They're definitely memorable to say the least.
Okay, so now moving on forward. When do you decide you want to take a chance and go elsewhere and move on to training other places? How does that come about?
So, again, it's like there's things that I wish I could have done differently. Obviously, I didn't leave on the best of terms. I was obviously still being a freaking pain in the ass, like I can still be sometimes. But everybody was telling me like, oh, you should go train with Taven and Bennett. So Taven and Bennett at that point were a lot closer to my house, so I figured might as well go and try wrestling there. And so I started training there, and Taven and Vinny, they were all great. Vincent, for those who don't know, from Ring of Honor, they were always great to me. They taught me a lot of good things when it comes to like character work and just fine tuning some stuff. Because again, like I say this, like I came into that school thinking like I knew a lot more than I actually did. So I had the ego going in my way, and then I finally got like checked when I was there. Yeah. Like in my first couple of days, like I realized I don't know everything. I don't know all these things. So it's over time. I started to learn to humble myself a little bit. Okay. And so from Taven and Bennett and Vinny, I went and trained with Ryan Drew when he was up at the lockup. And then like Lord and behold, we come full circle. Now I'm coming down to Showcase again after all these years and training with Ken Doan on Wednesdays when I can, and then also training with Thomas Santel up at Beyond School in Worcester. So the thing that I am not ashamed about in what I've done in wrestling is I've trained in different places, and I feel like I've been able to grasp a good knowledge on different concepts because each trainer is different.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so during your time at Benny, Matt, and Mike, you get an opportunity to work for XWA at the time? You start working shows there?
Yeah, so that's the thing. Is like that's one of those situations where like I did work for XWA, and it was during that time like I was enjoying going to training and stuff when I was when I was on like break from school and stuff, because I was going to school in Connecticut at the time, and I kind of got a little complacent just working there and like one other place at the time, NCW. Yeah. I kind of got complacent because my father had just passed away, and it was just kind of one of those things where I was kind of losing the luster for wrestling. But yeah, XWA, there's a lot of things that I'm not really the biggest fan about. Not really the biggest fan of Mike Antonucci. That's just being honest. Go like anybody that knows those rumors, like they're true. He's not a good person. He will gaslight you for not going to Disney World with him. 3 months after my father passes away, he tells me that my father would have loved if I went to Disney World with him. Actual thing said to me. Yeah, he's. And then, you have to film promos in your underwear or else you won't get booked. And then when somebody calls them out about it, it's like one of those things. But anyways, besides that, here's the thing. My training with Vinny and Taven and Mike was awesome. I loved every second of training with them. And none of this stuff had anything to do with them when I say that about him, and I want to make that very clear. Yep. Because they didn't know, they had no idea. A lot of this stuff I kept to myself for the longest time because it was fairly embarrassing. Mm-hmm. They had no idea. So that's where I will put a pin in that conversation.
Okay. So I got a question go on that, right? So when you left Showcase, did Jose Perez have anything to do with bringing? Because I know at that time, people may not remember the story, but when XWA was open up, I just asked, I asked Jose if he wanted to, kind of be on our staff, and we'd figure something out. And that's when he told me, "Oh, I'm Mike's." I forget what he said, like
right-hand
guy. He's in the process of doing something, and then 3 or 4 months later, roughly, he's opened up a school, and then people start filtering out. So, did Jose have any chirping, or was it?
No.
I mean, because legit, like when we look at it now, it's closer to your house, right? You were immature, but just because of the age. I mean, like a lot of it, you look at it back then, you're like, okay, what did Jose do? But like legitimately, a lot of it made sense, and I think a lot of people forget too. Some days you're not ready for training, or somebody needs to humble you, which is ironic because we just had this conversation literally last night. Yeah. But it sounds like Matt and Vinny,
Mike,
and Mike, they brought you to that first realization, which probably should have been done earlier. It just never was, or maybe you never heard it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So with Jose, I will say that he had nothing. At that point, I was just fairly in my own mind competitive with cool people. like the tag team, the cool people. I was just fairly competitive, and I would just follow a lot in where they went. So I saw they were going to a different training. I was like, okay, I'm going to go do a different training too. Because that's just how I am. Fairly, I will find somebody that's close to me in experience and like compete with them. Sometimes it's a little unhealthy, but it doesn't hurt to have a little healthy competition.
So now you train with all those guys. Okay. Now after training with all those guys that we mentioned, does the creepiness from Mike gets you to leave and not say anything and look for another place and then finally find Top Rope and train with Ryan Drew?
So
we're talking about Mike
Ryan
Antonucci.
had come to a training.
Yep.
Yeah. So Ryan had come to a training one night, and Ryan is awesome because he kind of gave me the boot in the ass that I really needed, because he was just kind of talking with me, and he's just like, where do you work right now? And I'm like, oh, XWA, a place in Maine, and NCW. He's like, that's it? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, how long have you been wrestling? I'm like, set amount of years. He's like, you really need to step it up. And so he just kind of gave me a boot in the ass. He's like, come train with me on Wednesday. So I went to training with Ryan, and then he said, on the fly with whoever I was wrestling, and I realized, wow, I am legitimately awful. I am terrible. Not in the fact that, David and Vinny and Ben all didn't train me well. It's just the fact that, like, I just felt like right there, I was like, wow, I am not a good wrestler. Like, can you please help me? Can you please help fine tune me? And Ryan did that for the next 2 years, and he's still on me to this day. Yeah, it's like he is an excellent coach in the fact that he stays on his students and he expects his students to put in hard work, because he knows that in order to get to the top, it's like you need to put in that hard work. And he's been on me since he started training. So I've always been appreciative of that.
Okay. So, shortly after that, you start working shows for Top Rope Promotions as well, after your beginning with Ryan?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I would start doing the Brockton shows, which is where Ryan was booking. He was primarily booking the Brockton shows. And so I started out doing the Brockton shows, and then over time I would make it to doing the Fall River shows and then the New Bedford shows. So I had I slowly creeped my way into Top Rope.
Okay. I do want to ask about Nick Steele. He's a friend of both of ours for many, many years, and you got to interact with Nicky Steele. Any thoughts on Nick?
I remember the day. I had only known him for about a year before he passed. I remember the day that I got the text. I remember crying, reading that message from Steve Ricard that he had passed away, as my mind instantly went to his kids, because having lost a father, I know how much that sucks. So my mind immediately went to them. I still have a video of Nick on my phone of him yelling for us to go and sing karaoke instead of playing pool at the Brockton VFW. He's like, go out there and sing a fucking song. Come on. It's still, every time it pops up, I still laugh about it. He was a nice guy. He, like I said, I only knew him for about a year, but I remember him always making me laugh. He made all the students laugh. He was just a fun guy to be around. He was an excellent trainer, but it's just that fun personality that you still feel is missing sometimes in New England wrestling right now.
Yes,
because he is fun, but I miss.
Yeah,
I'm really. I will say that.
And he's truly missed. Condolences again to his loved ones, his family, his kids. He's always in our thoughts. He's never forgotten. One guy that I want to touch on because he's controversial and you hear many stories from different people that have to interact with him is Steve Ricard. You know, you mentioned Steve. I want to know your interactions, your thoughts, and your experiences dealing with Steve.
So my thing with so I would play during COVID. I would play Michigan Rummy with Steve. So him and a bunch of other people from Top Rope. So I mean, we've all like Steve and I. We never really had a crossword with each other, but at the end of the day, when it came to loyalty, I always remember that Ryan was the first guy to vouch for me in Top Rope. So when Ryan decided to separate his Brockton shows from Top Rope, I made it clear that I was going to be leaving Top Rope and sticking on that one.
Okay.
I got a question that I'm not sure this is your story to tell, but do you want to shed some light on the splitting up of Top Rope when Teddy started his stuff, Drew started his? Do you want to shed any light on that, or do you think that's someone else's story to tell?
I mean, I personally think it's someone else's story just because I don't know all the details. I know that some people, it's essentially just down to a lot of miscommunication, but it's definitely not my story to tell because I don't have any of the details on that.
Okay.
I mean, the fact that he doesn't have anything bad to say about Steve, which is good, because there's not too many people. I mean, I always say Steve is Steve.
Yeah.
And some people see that as a pass, but, you know, I've known Steve roughly since 99, but I haven't had any interaction with him for like over a decade, you know, but my impression is he's the same guy in some ways as he is in 99. Hopefully with everything you change, but...
Yeah, my last interaction with Steve wasn't so positive, so slightly. He could be a hit or a miss, you know. We always got along because I met Steve when he was just a camera guy. You know, he used to go to shows and videotape, and he was basically a fan that would videotape and then sell the footage to the boys. That's how I met Steve Ricard. And we were both teenagers at that time. So, you know, for many, many years we were tight, and I was at every show, and he did a lot for me, you know. He put me with some good talent, and I always appreciated that. But he could be a hard ass. Did you ever get the bare hands? What are you doing, kid? What the fuck? You ever get that?
No, I never got.
You were lucky.
All right, so let's get out. So you're training with Drew. When did you start going up to Maine? Not to Buxton, but when you started to go to either Limitless or Let's Wrestle, how did that story come about? Because I think that's when your career started to separate yourself from other people in New England. So
Let's Wrestle stemmed off of the demise of IWE. John the Bomb Breyer literally made his own competition. He had literally threatened cricket at that time. So, and we all wanted that company to be better than it was. And John didn't see it that way. He said to give him the belt, and he pretty much blew up on Danny. And then all of us, like a couple of us, were just like, all right, we don't need to deal with this. Like, we don't need to deal with this type of BS. Like, and then Mainstay Posse, MFB, and Alexander Lee were just like, let's do our own thing in Central Maine. And so it was me, Calvin Strange, Mainstay Posse, and Alexander Lee, who all pretty much were the first 5 people that were like, yeah, I'm on board for Let's Wrestle. Randy did what he did and got the whole show moving. I was on the first show, and I was there up until the pandemic. I had one little small hiatus from there, but there's no story really there. But from the pandemic, I started doing the Limitless tapings which also had a lot of Let's Wrestle guys on them. And then Randy asked me and Channing that about the fact that we were going to start teaming together. So Randy was big on like pushing the tag division at that point during like all the lockdown and stuff. So he wanted us to be a tag team for Limitless. We were the Prestige, and we stole that name right from Ryan Waters and Matt Magnum when they were the Prestige.
Yep.
And from there, they were looking for something for Mac Daniels to do as well on the card. And with John Alba also vouching for all of us, he kind of pitched the idea of me, Mac, and Channing all being one collective group. And we went from the Prestige to Prestigious. And from there, we would eventually split up, have an awesome triple threat match last year during the Vacation Land Cup. And it is probably one of my favorite stories I've done in wrestling so far, was from the rise and fall of Prestigious in Limitless. And then from there, I would go on to win the Let's Wrestle title from my former teammate, Mac Daniels, because he had the championship at that point. And now I am currently reigning as the Let's Wrestle champion up in Central Maine, a place I have a lot of pride in.
Okay. Chris?
So even though you weren't training on either umbrella, I always watched your stuff, even though we didn't see eye to eye in a lot of stuff. So seeing you develop, I mean, you're a perfect heel. You really are. Like literally the face, the mannerisms, so seeing you develop in going up to Maine, I think that was like your rising in the independence, because from going there, working with Limitless, you could see the confidence, because I'm watching, I'm like, okay, this kid kind of gets it.
Yeah.
And I think you were with a bunch of guys at the same time. It wasn't just you rising. It was a couple of you guys rising between you and Channing, which I thought that to me was even better, because it just wasn't one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Channing is when I mentioned earlier about that healthy competition, like he's the guy for me right now. Mm-hmm. Like he is like a brother to me, as in I love him to death, but I will punch him to shut up sometimes. Mm-hmm. But he would do the exact same for me. So there you go. But literally, like, he is that guy that I'm currently like have that healthy competition with. Like we push each other. We want each to get better while also trying to make sure that our own careers are going upwards as well. And it's like there's days you have to be really honest with each other. There's days where we're mad at each other, but at the end of the day, I know that he makes me better, and I hope I help make him better.
So, obviously we've talked about the Let's Wrestle and Limitless. Recently, we've seen you also compete for AEW and have some appearances there. Can you talk to us about some of those experiences and how that came about?
So, AEW... the past, I've been able to wrestle for them 4 times, and the fact that I can say that is honestly, I'm grateful. With AEW, it's like a typical backstage experience. Like WWE is just a little more laid back, is what I've come to notice. Mm-hmm. Typical catering, and then through the day, like everybody will kind of just like flock around the whiteboard looking to see when the dark elevation, when they were having it at the time, seeing what were coming up. It would literally be like an entire horde of people surrounding a whiteboard once they saw Aubrey Edwards start writing everything for dark elevation. So it was the same experience pretty much every single time, except the first time there was CM Punk, and the other 3 times there wasn't, obviously for reasons we know. He held the door open for me. That was cool. I was like, thanks. He kind of looked at me like I was stupid, but it's like I was like, thanks, appreciate it. And like you helped me really like wrestling growing up, so I appreciate it. And yeah, that's it. I mean, it sounds like such a mark when I say it, but it was a cool experience. Wrestling Matt Hardy on one of the last ever Dark episodes was pretty cool. It could go frantic at some points because you would get like 4 minutes, and then next thing you know, it's like you're in the ring, and they're like, "Okay, you have to go home like right now. Like we just got in here." And it's like we were making a beeline just to get Matt Hardy in and him win the match. So, I mean, it's been fun every single time I've been there. So I hope to wrestle for them very soon.
Okay, so you also have your eyes on other companies, big companies, mainstream companies. If you were to choose, between AEW, WWE, or maybe Japan overseas, what's your next big interest? What company would you like to pursue and potentially get a job, get signed?
So my thing is, and I've noticed this throughout my entire life, is that life is ever changing. So when I say this, I look at it, what my position is right now in my life. If I were to get a contract right now tomorrow, I would choose AEW. Just because part of it is I don't want to move all the way down to Florida for WWE for their developmental. Not right now, is what I should say. My whole family's up in Rhode Island, and I just moved back a year ago. Mm-hmm. And as I said earlier, my dad passed away, so like my mom only really has me because my sister's away in college in Connecticut, and like sure, it's a short enough drive, but it's always nice for her to have somebody that's close by. And then I don't know how much longer I got with my grandparents, so I want to take advantage of those things while I have them, because you learn throughout life that things can happen spontaneously, and then you will consistently regret spending more time with a certain someone once they are gone.
Yeah, definitely got to make time, as well for the family. We were just talking about this before we came on, passing of one of our wrestling brothers, Bray Wyatt, just passed away unexpectedly. Our condolences goes out to his family, and may he rest in peace. You just never know when your time comes, so definitely got to make the best of it when it comes to family and friends and loved ones.
Right now, are you 8 years in, 9 years in? Is that correct?
8, yeah.
All right.
I would say.
That was pretty good because I am terrible with timelines now. So what is some advice you could either give yourself in your first few years, or just advice to some of the younger guys that either you should have done or maybe you shouldn't have done?
Keep shut would be that I would say to myself. I would say to any younger guys is it's okay to train other places, but don't burn the bridge while you're crossing over. Like that was my mistake, and it took me a very long time to rebuild that bridge with some people, including you guys. So that would be the main thing is stay humble, and if you're gonna go train another place, that's totally okay, but don't forget where you started.
Yeah, that seems to be the most frequent.
Well, no, you'll enjoy this. We just had this conversation with literally somebody yesterday, and we were setting together the plans and goals we actually had for this person, and we mentioned, like typically at our place now we have Kenny on Wednesdays, we got Don Vega, we have Congo comes down. Hopefully he's coming back the next week or two. We have John Thornhill comes down. We have Big Business comes down. So, and a couple weeks ago when we were speaking, I remember you saying that, and it kind of put the light on. It's like, instead of other people going to other places, why don't we keep bringing in people to us? And it just kind of happened with when Congo had a stroke. We reached out to him, to come down. Mm-hmm. With Kenny, that was all a fluke. So, I don't think people know that too. I think one problem, especially younger guys, they don't know how to communicate. Mm-hmm. And then some reason, if they know somebody, some reason they think they're always trying to harm them or their career. And I don't know why that is.
There are, I mean, I can get it because there are some people that do want to harm your career. There are some people that don't want to see you succeed. There are some people that don't want the best for you. So I can understand why some people will be like, oh, you know, this person doesn't have my best interest at heart. I'm not saying that everybody is that way, but there are some people like that. It's sad.
Yeah, and unfortunately, hearing some stories that you mentioned earlier, it's like, you know what it is? I think it's because we're not like that, and other people are. I think we can't see it because we don't do that.
Well, you know, there's been a lot of different situations that happen that stay on the back burner and different organizations and stuff like that. But for some reason, Chris Blackheart, getting back to, you know, Brett and the experiences he had with you and then later on with myself, you know, we're kind of like the black sheep of New England. I mean, and I know we had our little mishap or whatever. You want to get into that, Brett? Do you want to? I'm sure people are tuning up and they're gonna watch this and they're gonna be.
That could be part two.
They want to hear about it. You know.
Well, because we have 13 minutes because I told Brett we would get him off about 9:55, just before 10.
Yeah,
it's 13. We got a lot to go over in 13 minutes. I think we should almost save the untold stories to another episode. Because we still have to go over the name game. Yeah. We still he has to plug his upcoming shows, his social media. So
I mean, we could always do part 2.
So what do you thought? Because there's a lot of good and bad that can be. Do you know what it is? I say there's a learning experience.
I would say this: essentially the preview is the preview thing to say about it is there was just a lot of things taken out of context. That's essentially what it boiled down to. Yep. We'll get into it.
I agree with that. Yeah, we'll definitely get into it. But, you know, moving forward, before we wrap things up, any plugs that you like to let the fans watching and hearing us know where your upcoming shows and where they can find BRG?
Yep. All my shows, I have plugged them on my social media. Easiest way to find me is Victorious_BRG. That's on TikTok. That's on Instagram and Twitter, also known as X now. Thanks, Elon Musk. We appreciate that. I'm always promoting every single show that I'm on my social media. So instead of me trying to memorize what I have coming up, that's the easiest way for you guys to find out.
All right, so definitely go check that out. And since we're into plugs, Chris Blackheart, you know, September 8th, we're back at the Showcase Arena, 126 Main Street in Woonsocket, Rhode Island. That's a 7:47 p.m. bell time. On September 15th, we're back in Taunton, Mass, at the BFW Hall in Taunton, and it's a Friday night.
That's a Friday night, so the Welcome Back to School tour.
Welcome Back to School tour. That's one of your shady bookings, huh?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Moving on, we're back in Taunton on October 13th. The 14th back in Woonsocket, and Millville, Massachusetts on the 21st of October.
Yep, and in between there, Columbus Day weekend, we will be doing Autumn Fest. We just don't know. We're still working out if we're going to go Friday. Actually, it's probably going to be Saturday, Sunday, or just one of those days. We're still working on finalizing that.
So all that will be up, showcaseprowrestling.com. You want to follow all our socials at SP Wrestling, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. The Twitter, TikTok. You haven't been dancing much, but still it's up there. And also on October 28th, we'll be co-promoting that event.
One of the rare times when I would literally share a building, because I don't share stuff. I don't share.
You don't share.
I don't share
underwear,
venues. I don't share beer. I don't share my women. I don't share my ammo. Some things you don't share.
Okay, so October 28th, Powerhouse Wrestling returns to the Franklin Elks Lodge. That's 7 p.m. bell time. It's a Friday night. And on the card, you will see Teddy Goods taking on You pulled it up there, Danny. Taking on Dirty Dango. Also on the card, IWA Women's Champion Ivy. She just won the title in Puerto Rico. She was a guest here in the pod a couple days ago or a couple weeks ago. She'll be defending that title. Myself and Sabio Vega will be going up against Nunzio and Ray Jazz, the FBI. All that and more Friday night, October 28th in Franklin. And for that, you could go to Powerhouse Wrestling NE on Instagram and Facebook to get your tickets. We'll be putting out more information in the upcoming weeks. Anything else?
Let's go the name game. That's one of the favorites.
The name game. Okay, you could go first. See, he sucks.
No,
he sucks at this.
No,
man.
you know what it is? I just blanked his name.
All right.
Mikey Aducci.
Okay, Mike Antonucci.
Antonucci, yeah.
Thank God he's away from wrestling now.
All right, that's one word.
That's a good one.
Steve Ricard.
Misunderstood in some lights, but I can also understand why there's controversy around him.
Randy Carver.
Very talented as a booker. For someone as young as he is, I am surprised how well he has grasped the knowledge of the wrestling world.
Ryan Drew.
One of the best trainers to ever come out of New England. Tough, but fair. And you will never, ever doubt that he is lying to you, because he is 100% truthful and will always be brutally honest with you.
You got one, Chris?
Saja Muldoon.
Oh my God, that's Sarge gave me my first loss ever. Yeah, he choked me out, but he's also the reason why I won that battle royal. So, shout out to Sarge for helping me get my first ever heavyweight title match.
Malik.
Oh, I miss him. I still talk to him from time to time. But man, I miss those road trips, man. Those road trips were so much fun. All like marking out to wrestling music, having a ton of fun, like literally just the inside jokes that we had and we would just talk about them for 5 hours straight. Oh, God. Some days I do.
Drew Cordero.
Very talented at where he has brought Beyond. Because I remember the first time I ever went to a Beyond show in 2015 with the Cool People. It was like one of my first real tastes of that style of independent wrestling, and it was a spectacle. So the fact that, and this is a Fett, the fact that he's still able to keep that name as a hot commodity in the area is truly impressive.
Matt Taven.
He, awesome trainer, awesome guy. Literally, whenever I have a question related to TV or anything related to my gimmick, he's always there to answer. He's always been there for me when I've needed him.
Okay, and the last one, and I have to ask because he's here, and one word or quick story, Chris Blackheart.
You are genuinely one of the most forgiving people I've ever met. Sometimes it bites you in the ass because God knows I've given you a reason to not be. But you want the best for people. which and you know what? I'll say this. This is something that I always fail to mention. You're the only person in wrestling to come to my dad's funeral, which just goes to show like that you like, and on top of that, we were not on good terms at that point. So I think that instead of me trying to justify it with all these different descriptions, I feel that story alone just goes to show your character.
Okay, man.
No, I appreciate it. You know, we came over here because I think a lot of people would be surprised when we put that up. Seeing you grow as a wrestler, as a person, as an individual, and even as a man, you know, it's heartwarming.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that I hope younger talent who are questioning themselves or questioning what they're doing, I would say reach out to Brett. I mean, because I think a lot of people want to repeat the cycle instead of maybe learning from a cycle and not making the mistakes that they have to. So
Yes.
I know seeing your success, I've watched you literally from day one. Even again, anyone who's under our umbrella, like even Malik, I've always watched what he's done. You know, same with AC and Sammy. You know, it's a positive. So I think you're still young. You still have a lot to offer this industry. So I would just, I'm going to tell you what I probably said years ago is get the fuck out of New England. You know, train here, build good roots here, but go elsewhere to make it big and get your name because you can do it.
Yep. With that being said, Brett, thanks for coming on. We got to continue part 2. We'll hook that up at some point. And, you know, if people want to hear the story, they got questions, feedback, leave us a comment, leave us a like. You can't leave a dislike now because, you know, people's feelings. But on that note, thanks for being on, Brett. It was good talking and catching up. And we'll catch you down the road, man.
Thanks for having me, guys. It was a lot of fun.
All right. So for Chris Blackheart and Don Vega, this has been the Showcase Pod. We'll catch you down the road.